Once upon a time, in the Kingdom of Canori, known as one of the most successful kingdoms with great people. The king of the Canori kingdom was King Zach, known to be one of the strongest and wealthiest kings ever ruled in the kingdom. King Zach is married to a very beautiful woman, Queen Chomi, and they both have a very beautiful daughter, Princess Dara. The people of Canori love their king passionately and will do anything to protect him. One day, the princess and her maids were walking down the road in the village. While on their way, the princess saw a very tall, dark, shining, handsome man sitting under a tree. She tapped one of her maids and said, "Amanda, who is that young man over there?" Amanda replied, "My princess." "Who? I can't see anyone." "Have you suddenly gone blind, that you can't see that man sitting under the tree over there? Anyways, never mind," the princess said to Amanda. She nodded her head as they passed and went to the river to fetch water. The next day, because of how curious Princess Dara is to know the young man, she goes back to the river. Before she leaves, she calls her maid Amanda and tells her, "If the king and the queen ask after me, please tell them I'm sleeping and do not wish to be disturbed." Amanda asked, "But my princess, where are you going? At least I should know." The princess replied, "It's none of your business," and she left. When she was close to the river, she saw the young, tall, handsome man under the same tree. Immediately she hid in a bush and kept looking at him. She was so happy to see such a handsome man. After a while, she tried adjusting her gown, and when she raised her head to watch him again, he was no longer under the tree. She was shocked and moved to where he was seated, but couldn't find anyone. She became sad because she was not able to ask for his name, after which she went back home. Princess Dara was in her room that evening. She couldn't stop thinking about him. His thoughts were filled in her head. The next morning, Princess Dara was summoned by her father, the king. The king asked, "Princess, where did you go yesterday without the guards nor your maids and without my consent?" She was shocked. She replied, "But father, how did you know?" And he replied, "I sent the guards to follow you when I saw you sneaking out." She replied, "I'm sorry, father. I just wanted to receive some fresh air and have a think, that's all." The king asked, "Is there something bothering you?" She said, "No, father." The king said to her, "Do not leave the palace without my knowledge," and she replied, "Yes, father." Later that night, she had a dream about the young man. In the dream, they were married with kids and were so happy. The next morning, Princess Dara sneaked out of the palace again and went in search of the man. She went under the tree and couldn't find him there. She went deep inside the bush and couldn't find him, and then she became very tired and suddenly passed out. A few moments later, a young man came and carried on his back while she was still unconscious. The palace guards and maids were all out, looking for the princess, but she was not found. When she regained consciousness, she was jacked up with shock and fear. "Oh my God! Where am I?" She tried to open the door, but it was locked. Suddenly she saw a man standing close to the window with his back backing her. He said to her, "Oh, you're awake. Who are you? Show your face." "And how did I get in here?" she asked, looking confused. He turned to her and said, "You passed out in the bush. I don't know who you are or where you stay, so I brought you here. Now that you're awake, you may leave." Princess Dara was shocked to see that it was the tall, handsome man she had a crush on that saved her. "Oh my God! You leave here?" He replied, "Yes, I leave here. You may leave now. I'm sure your people must be looking everywhere for you. You've been here for 5 hours now. Please leave." Then the princess asked, "Can I know your name?"
I'm Dara.
"Please, what is your name?" He dragged her out and pushed her outside. "At least let me know your name," she screamed. On her way home, she saw the guards and maids as they greeted her and took her to the palace. When the king saw her, he was so angry and asked the guards to lock her up in her room and never to let her out until he said so. She begged and wept, but the king turned a deaf ear as the guards took her away. A few days later, while she was still locked up in her room, She started having strange feelings about some evil spirit around her. She started screaming and shouting for help, but nobody came to her. Because the king had traveled and had given an order that no one should open her door. When the king returned, he asked that she be released and asked the maids to dress her in her royal attire because they had a big guest. After which she should be brought to his chambers. The king and queen and some elders with a young man were all seated in the palace as the princess walked in, looking stunning in her dress. Everyone was so amazed and gushed over her beauty. She knelt before the king to greet him. The king answered, "My lovely daughter, this man has come to seek your hand in marriage. That young man over there wants to marry you. He is the prince of Yumalin's kingdom and the heir to the throne." She replied, "No, father, I can't marry him. I have someone I love." They were all surprised, and the king said, "You must marry him. He is your husband." She became very angry and left. The king and elder became angry, and the prince stood up and left. The king became very angry and said to his wife, "Woman, you better talk to your daughter." She replied, "I'm sorry, your highness, I will." She left. Princess Dara was seen with her mother as they discussed. "Mother, I won't marry that man." Princess Dara said to her mother, and the mother replied, "Who then is the man you love?" Princess Dara, "Mother, I will bring him home soon. He must be of royal blood, that is the tradition." The queen said to Princess Dara. The next day, Princess Dara sneaked out of the palace again in search of the man. She went under the tree and met him there and was so happy. He said to her, "Why are you here?" And she replied, "Because I want to see you again." She sat close to him and said to him, "Please marry me. Let me be your bride." He was shocked and mute. The next day she went back again, met him and spent time with him. She kept going back to see him, and this time she asked about his name, but he refused to tell her. A few days later, the chief priest visited the palace and met with the king. He told the king that the princess should not marry the man she is in love with, else calamity would befall the kingdom. Princess Dara overheard them, ran back to her room, packed her clothes and ran out of the palace. A few minutes after the chief priest left, the king asked the guards to fetch the princess. The guards came back without the princess, and the king asked where the princess was. "Your highness, she is nowhere to be found in her room or the palace." The king screamed and ordered the guards to look for her everywhere in the kingdom.